Okay, so I guess we'll start off welcoming everyone to the Avodas HaParsha here in beautiful Ner Avram, Shari Chesed Yerushalayim, right? We're Zocher to be able to learning Torah in Yerushalayim. It's a great thing. Now, tonight's year, I'm going to warn you, it's going to be kind of all over the place. I'll tell you why. Because, again, I was realizing that, yes, it's Parshas Bamidbar, but also it is Shmuel and Navi's yahrzeit, and there's like a lot of people that go to Kever Shmuel. I live not far from there in Givat Zev, so like the roads are closed off. Many people go to Kever Shmuel, and Yerushalayim. Many people are going to the Kotel tonight, and all these things. So I somehow wanted to mix all those things together. That's when I get myself into trouble. When you have too many things. There was an image that I always try to keep in mind. Oh, I'm glad Shavach's here to take care of that. There was one time in Shul, they were throwing candies for some kind of simcha, bar mitzvah or something, and I saw a kid, barely over a toddler, and suddenly candies started coming down, and he reached out in all directions at once, and he just ended up falling down, because he was trying to. So I do that sometime when I'm looking, but hopefully, Bezos Hashem will find something. So it's not going to be as locked into Parshas Bamidbar, but it will connect to it. Okay, we're going to start with an interesting halacha, right? An agarata connected to halacha. There's a connection that the Tolna Rebbe made. This is very powerful. Bav Metzia Daf Nun Tes. Okay, many people learning Bav Metzia now in the Daf Yomi. So Rav Chelbo says, the olam ye adam zahir bichvod ishto. Person should always be careful with the kavod, the honor of his wife. She'ein bracha metzuya b'toch beiso shel adam ela b'schus ishto. That bracha is only found in a person's house in the merit of his wife. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, ula Avram hetiv bavura. That to Avram, right? It's interesting. The standard shot in the pasuk is that Paro gave Avram stuff, right? In Sarah's honor. The Marsha says no. It's that Hashem gave to Avram all sorts of good things in Sarah's honor, right? Because of her kavod and her schus. And he says, this is what Rava would tell Bnei Mechoza. There was a city in Bavel called Mechoza. And Rava would tell them, Okiru neshaychu. That means also, again, honor your wives. Ki hechi dis atru, so that you will become rich. Okay, now obviously this isn't necessarily talking about riches in terms of the dollars and cents per se. So in terms of trying to figure this out, he connects it to another saying of Rabbi Chelbo. Okay, this is, again, one of the differences between people that know Shas, well, back and forth, and people like me, that we're seeing isolated things. I remember years ago, Rav Nevensel Shlita was the Rav in the old city. He told us, at that time, I think he said, after he learned Shas about 10 times or something, he said, then the characters start to come together. In other words, not just a statement of Rama Gamliel here and a statement of Rama Gamliel there. Suddenly you see Rama Gamliel, the picture which is painted by all of his statements all over Shas and the way those things connect. So here, Tolna Rebbe connected this to a statement of Rabbi Chelbo from Moed Katan, which is not Nagarata, it's halacha, and a fascinating halacha. Rabbi Chelbo says, Havara Sefer Torah shenikra, if a person, lo aleinu, sees a Sefer Torah that has been torn, chayev likro shtei kriyos. He has to tear kriya, like in Avelis, in mourning, to tear his clothes, but you have to do it twice. Why? Echad al hagvil, one for the white parchment, ve'echad al aksav, and one for the letters. Now that's kind of strange, because let's look at some variations of that halacha. Klaf, parchment, has to be prepared, right? L'shem, it has to be prepared, l'shem, right, Sefer Torah. If you had cloth which was still blank that was prepared for the Sefer Torah and it got torn or burned, you wouldn't tear kriya for that. If a part of the Sefer Torah which is blank, like in the margins, which has no letters, is torn, you also wouldn't tear kriya for that tearing of the parchment. But when the part with letters is torn, you tear not only for the letters but also for the parchment. That's strange. Okay? Why would that be and why is it? So, he brought a fascinating explanation. He says that we look at the letters of a Sefer Torah and the klaf in the wrong way. We view klaf, we view parchment as simply a means, an enabler of getting the words on the Sefer Torah. Just like you'll say the kulmus, right, the quill which the sofer uses. Also, it's a means of getting it there. But what is the Sefer Torah made out of? We say black letters. But we're wrong. Because every letter is made up of a black letter and white klaf.
Negative space.
Oh, see, probably you
Space that has a pay inside.
Oh, exactly. Those spaces inside are white klaf. And we know that this is a legitimate view of the Sefer Torah because Chazal describing, so to speak, the celestial Sefer Torah say that it is eish chara al gabe eish levana. It is black fire on white fire. Meaning it's not just letters of black fire. The Sefer Torah is composed of black fire and white fire. So those two things together make a letter. Now obviously, when we point to this, what's that? We'll say it's a pei, right? Because the black ink spells it out. But without the white part of it, it wouldn't be a letter either. That's why if the area of the letters is torn, you tear both on the letter and on the klaf. Okay? So now he tries to put these two statements, Rabbi Chelbo, together. He says that okiru neshaychu, right? Women, without getting into all sorts of women's issues, many times have less of, so to speak, the public or acting roles in Torah, in Judaism. Okay, the actions of the woman are oftentimes, the influence of the woman are oftentimes, so to speak, in the background. But what he's telling us is, okiru neshaychu, value your wives, just like realize that the white parchment is part and parcel of the Torah. It's not just there as a material, because as we said, if the white parchment without letters is torn, you don't have to tear your clothes. Only white parchment combined with ink to become a letter, you tear both for the white parchment and for the letter. Okay, so he says this is a picture just of the partnership of Jewish men and women. Now, how does this connect to, and you have to realize also, the word kavod always refers to something individual, right? In other words, once klaf combines with ink, it's not just big, blah, white klaf. It becomes an individual letter. Okay, so that's important as well.
Rob mentioned that you learn, even though women are not part of a minion, right?
Right.
Where you learn many halachas of tefillah from Chana.
Exactly. She provided the background, and we're going to get the Chana more tonight.
There's a certain, everyone has their place.
And when they combine right, that's exactly how it should be.
That's the problem. They don't combine right, that's when you get all these problems.
Oh.
You combine it right, it's a perfect.
Yep. So now Rabbi Chelbo's two statements, right, go together like that. So how does it tie into Parshas Bamidbar? Somewhat tangentially. Okay, Bamidbar is called by the Rishonim Chumash HaPekudim, the book of counting. Okay, we have a lot of counting in this parsha, and there's more counting throughout. Now, when it comes to the counting, there's an interesting and puzzling thing which Chazal say. They darshan in Maseches Kiddushin, the last words in the Torah, le'enei kol Yisrael, to the eyes of all of Israel. Yisrael, they say, is Rashi Tevos, like an acronym for Yesh Shishim Ribo Osios LaTorah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. Okay, a beautiful thought that many people say in drashas, because 600,000 is kind of like the primal number for Am Yisrael. Even though we'll see in the count here, it was 600,000 in Bamidbar and a few more, but that critical mass of Am Yisrael is what's called Shishim Ribo, 600,000. But there aren't 600,000 letters in the Torah. The Pnei Yeshua counted up, and he says it's more like 300,000 letters in the Torah. So, Rav Galanti, right, one of the early Mekubalim said, that's because there's also the white part, meaning that you're forgetting about the women, okay? And the women correspond to the white part of the letter which is there. So you double your 300,000, and there you have your 600,000. Okay? A beautiful thought which is there. But now let's try to see what type of influence women especially have. And I want to emphasize this. I was inspired. I'm going to bring little bits from it. A shir that Ben Zion Twersky from Milwaukee gave recently, which was called, Shvuas, a Chag for women. You can find it on Torah anytime. It has some very good things in there. And among all the Yom Tovim, women feel more sidelined on Shvuas than anything else, right? Because basically, whatever, the men are staying up and having their thing at night, and then they want to come home, they want to take a nap. Of course, they wanted to take a nap Erev Yontif so they can stay up at night so they can't help. So who's left, holding the bag is the Ezras Noshim. Okay, so the way in which this influence works in a fascinating way. Remember, we said that the white cloth, the white parchment, makes the specific letter. It's something very specific. It's not like, okay, they're providing the catering, so to speak. Anybody can provide catering. There's something unique in terms of what and how it's done, and it ties into an amazing Chasam Sofer. This Rabbi Twersky brought. It's very cool. The Minig brought down, right, in the Shulchan Aruch to eat milchiks on Shavuos. Okay? Bit of an insight for me. I don't like cheese. Huh? Oh, the cheese is the white cloth. So the Chasam Sofer had a fascinating explanation for this. He said Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th of Adar. It says that his mother hid him for 3 months. She saw that she couldn't hide him anymore, so she went out and she put him in the river. 3 months from the 7th of Adar is the 7th of Sivan, which we call Shavuos. The daughter of Paro came out and pulled little baby Moshe out of the river, and she tried to get an Egyptian woman to nurse him. She tried a few Egyptian women to nurse him, and he refused. He didn't want to nurse. She was getting tense, but Miriam, who had been waiting in the wings to see what would happen, said, I think I have to bring you a Jewish woman to nurse him, and she brings his mother Yocheved, and she nurses him. So this goes down on the 7th of Sivan, on Shavuos. And why didn't he want to nurse from them? So Chazal brings down, says, Peh, the mouth, which is going to be medaberi mashchina, is going to be talking to the Shechina, should be nursing from an Egyptian woman. So therefore, Shavuos is the holiday of that special Jewish mother's milk, right, which enabled Moshe Rabbeinu to be able to accept the Torah for us. Without that, right, he would have been damaged, he would have been missing. So it sounds cute, but there's something very powerful in it. Every Jew has the ability to transform something physical, to imbue it with spirituality. Okay, this is something that we can do, and that's key to the Torah. The argument which is brought in the Gemara, where the Malachim attack Moshe Rabbeinu, first of all, they protest to Hashem. They say, Tna hodcha l'shamayim, what are you giving the Torah to them? Right? They're a bunch of losers, right? They can do averas and make it all sorts of things. And Moshe Rabbeinu has to answer them. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Echoz b'kisei kvodi v'achzer lehem tshuva. Hold on to my throne and answer them. Okay, which the Maharal explains is showing the nature of a human being. That we're able to be physical beings down here, and yet to have that connection to, so to speak, the throne of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the throne of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the kisei, which is sholem, is only through us here in this world. And then Moshe Rabbeinu gives his argument, which seems obvious. He said, did you guys come down to Mitzrayim? How can you, keep Pesach? Right? You have a mother and father? How can you do Kibbut Avim? Right? The Malachim knew that as well. What he was telling them is that the purpose of Torah is for physical things to be imbued with ruchnis and to be transformed. That you can't do. It's true, you can interact with Torah on a spiritual plane. Right? That's what they had, that's what they wanted. But the ability to transform, the ability to imbue the physical with that Kedusha is a fascinating, it's a medrash, and the Sfas Emes brings a fascinating thing for it. It says that at Har Sinai, right, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself, Yotza Nishmasam. Everybody's neshama left them. Right? Why? Because suddenly we see our source. We see that's where we come from. What are we doing in this physical world with all this stuff? We're out of here. Shum. All the neshamas left. And the Torah came to complain. Said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, does a person make a wedding and kill all the guests? Right? This is not a nice party. Everybody's dead. So the Torah then brought back the neshamas into everyone. And that's what the pasuk means, Torah Hashem Tamima Meshivas Nefesh. Meaning that the Torah, it's true, our neshama, what does our neshama have to do in this physical world? We feel cut off from our source, but the Torah comes and teaches us that with me, with the Torah, your interactions with the physical world will connect you to your source, will bring the Kedusha into this world, will elevate you to there. That's why the Torah brings us back to peace with our physicality, which is a major theme on Shavuos. Everybody quotes the line, Hakol modim atzeres b'ina nami lachem. Atzeres, which is another name for Shavuos. Right, there's questions, how are you supposed to celebrate Yom Tov? Chetzio Lashem, Chetzio Lachem, right, half learning and davening, half having your sudas. Everyone agrees, right, that on Shavuos you must have Lachem, right, because that's the name of the game. To elevate those things that are physical. The Tolna Rebbe says that's also part of the message that it says in the Gemara when they're figuring out when the Torah was given, Hakol modim de b'Shabbos nitna Torah. The Torah was given on Shabbos. Because Shabbos is the day in which we imbue the physical with the ruchnis. Everything. They paraphrase the phrase from Zmiras. Kodesh hilachem Shabbos hamalka. Right? In Baruch Elyon. Kodesh hilachem. It is holy to you. Right? The Shabbos hamalka, so to speak, is holy to you. But they darshan it, Kodesh hilachem. All the matters of lachem. All of your plain physical needs become Kodesh when it comes time to Shabbos. Shopping for Shabbos is Kodesh. Showering for Shabbos is Kodesh. Dressing up for Shabbos is Kodesh. Sleeping on Shabbos is Kodesh. Kodesh hi lachem. It turns all the lachem into that. Okay, so this idea of transformation is key to the Torah. And it's something that every Jew can do, but the Jewish woman particularly, right, perhaps almost as a paradigm there of Yocheved nursing Moshe Rabbeinu and influencing his spirituality through that very physical act. But in honor of Shmuel Hanavi's Yortzeit, so I wanted to just read Rav Chaim Shmulevitz's beautiful, touching description of the coat of Shmuel. Okay? The Pasuk says, now we all remember that Chana was childless for a long time, and then she went and she davened and she had Shmuel, and she said she was going to give him to Hashem. That when he was old enough, and even very little, she was going to bring him to the Mishkan, and there he would assist Eli HaKohen, and he would be devoted to Am Yisrael and all these things. And when she brought him up, she brought him mil koton ta'aselo imo. She made a little coat for him, a little me'il. And Chazal said, in the Yalkut Shimoni, that much later in the story of Shmuel, just after Shmuel dies, Shaul, right, who he crowned as king, was in big trouble. He was in big tsaros. And he wanted information from beyond this world, and he went to a Balasov. He went to a woman who was able to contact people who are no longer here. And when Shaul asks her, she says, oh, I got a connection. I got somebody here. And he says, who is it? She says, Ish zaken olevu ote me'il. It's an old man wearing a me'il, wearing a coat. So Chazal say, in the Yalkut, in the Medrash, that's the me'il koton taselo imo. With that coat, the me'il bo gadal, bo nikvar, bo Allah. He wore that all of his life. It grew with him. He was buried with that me'il. And in the spiritual world, that was how he appeared with that me'il. So Reb Chaim says, that's an amazing thing. A me'il is a physical item. It's a little coat which is made out of cloth. Right? He says, why is it that such a miraculous thing would happen? He says it's true. Am Yisrael in the Bamidbar, it says, their clothes never wore out, always stayed the right size, but he said that was necessary, right? Where else were they going to get clothing? Okay, but why did Shmuel could get another coat, right? Why do you have to have his little boy coat growing up with him, staying with him, getting buried with him, and how does it become part of his ruchnistic self? So he says, there was something very special in this me'il. He says, because the Radak tells them, he says, on this pasuk, me'il koton ta'aselo imo. Why did it say it made a little me'il? Why did it just say she made a coat? What do you mean a little coat? He says because a me'il was really clothing that was worn by Gedolim, he says, by adults. And he said, she, Merov Avata, from her great love for him, she made him such a me'il. Meaning, he says, Kol dimoseo tfiloseo, all of her tears and all of her tfilos. Kol ahavasa, all of her love. Kol liba, all her heart. Nas nachana hanaviyah b'me'il zeh she'asalo. She put all of that into that me'il that she made for him. Al yedei kach hafach ha'me'il atzmo lemekor shofei ava v'chesed. Remember that she parted from him at a very young age. And that became the transmitter of her love to Shmuel. Not only did it transmit her love to Shmuel, but it awakened in Shmuel tremendous Avos Yisrael and Avos Hashem. And with that me'il, he went around all of his life taking care of Am Yisrael, being Moser Nefesh for Am Yisrael, right? So he says this is the idea that we're able to imbue, right, physical things with the spiritual. And particularly, right, the Jewish woman is able to do that. That would be why it's very equivalent to that white fire, to the klaf. Something you don't see at first glance because it's there, it's internal, but it's a huge transformation. What type of message, right, is put in, so to speak, is imbued, especially by Jewish women, into everything that they do? So we often don't pay attention to the famous Rashi, right? Became especially famous because of a girls' school, which is named after it, right? It says in Perak Yotes in Yisro, Posuk Gimel, Moshe Elokim, Vayikra Elov Hashem min Nahar Leimor, Ko Tomar leBeis Yaakov, v'Taged livnei Yisrael. Ko Tomar leBeis Yaakov, this is how you should say to Beis Yaakov, v'Taged, and what you should speak to Bnei Israel. Now the Hebrew verbs are very key. Rashi points out, and it's true throughout Tanakh we see this, Amira is a soft, gentle, pleasant way of speaking. Lahagid, Chazal says, koshe kegidim, tough as sinews. Okay, if I would give you a piece of meat that had a sinew in it, you'd be chewing and chewing, you wouldn't make much progress. Okay, so that, it's hard, it's tough. Okay, so that was for the men. Kotomar leBeis Yaakov is to the women. Taged livnei Yisrael. What do you tell them? Atem re'isam asher asisi leMitzrayim. You saw what I did to Mitzrayim. I raised you up on the wings of eagles. Now im shemot tishmu b'koli, ushmartem es brisi, and you keep my covenant. V'yisem li segula mikol ha'amim. You will be my chosen among all nations. Ki li ha'aretz, for the entire world is mine. V'atem tiu li, you will be for me mamleches kohanim, a kingdom of kohanim, v'goy kadosh, a holy nation. Ela dvarim asher tedaber al bnei Yisrael. This is what you should tell bnei Yisrael. So the problem is, Tolna Rebbe said it, I think, from the Sfas Emes, we don't find two different texts for the women and for the men. In other words, it says, okay, you have to speak to the women, Ko Tomar leBeis Yaakov. Speak to them in a way which is pleasant, in a way which is soft, in a way which is gentle. The men, give it to them. Okay, but were there two different scripts? No, it was the same thing. It was that the women heard it in a way which is positive and optimistic and uplifting. Wow, you are going to keep my bris, you're going to keep my covenant, you're going to be a mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh, right? And that was something which drew them, right? It was so attractive, it was so beautiful, it was so loving. The men heard the exactly same words. If you keep my bris, you're going to be this, but if not, the implied bang and all these things. Different things. It wasn't on a different intellectual plane, right? It wasn't like it was, some kind of different, more basic thing. It was the exact same thing, but that aspect of the hopefulness, the optimism, right? The ability to raise spirits, which was the chelik of women in Mitzrayim, right? When we say Chazal were mechayev women in the mitzvah of arba kosos, the 4 cups at the Seder, even though really it's a time-dependent positive commandment, which in Torah laws women are exempt from. But here the Chachamim made them do it together with other Pirsume Nisa, right? Things where we publicize the miracle, like Ner Chanukah and like Megillah. So they give reasons for why it was. right? Two shitas in the Rishonim, whether it says, Afein hoyu bo sanes. The women were also in that miracle. One shita is that they also benefited from the miracle. The other shita is they brought about the miracle. In Mitzrayim, it was B'schus Noshim Tzidkanios Nigalu Avaseinu Mitzrayim. In the merit of the righteous women, our forefathers were redeemed from Mitzrayim. The Gemara in Sota tells us, what did the righteous women do? When the men were broken, physically and spiritually, the women would come, they would bring them something to eat. They would bring them something to drink. They would tell them that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take Am Yisrael out of there. Right? They were the ones that brought the tupim, the drums out with them because they knew there would be miracles which would happen. It was Miriam who told Amram when he separated from Yocheved and didn't want to bring children into the world. That was the role of the Noshim Tzidkanios in Mitzrayim. So going along that line, that was the way they heard these very kind of frightening words at Matan Torah. Matan Torah is very scary when you look at the effects. Right? This endless shofar which has got louder and louder, the thunder, the lightning, the smoke, all these things. And the women were saying, what a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing that it is. And that was what they're able to and were able to transmit, right, into everything which is there. I believe that that's the unique thing. And all of Am Yisrael are supposed to do this, right? Shavuos is also called Chag HaBikurim, right? We don't see too much sometimes the connection between Shavuos and Bikurim, but that's what the Torah calls it. Now the Bikurim, the first fruits, they weren't all brought on Shavuos because you bring them as they get ripe. Okay, it was a whole process that would be there, but the season begins with Shavuos. Right? And the Shtei Alechem, that korban from the first wheat, which is there, is a form of Bikurim. So the Sfas Emes says, because at the beginning of our entire harvest cycle, when things are getting, we want to imbue that with the Ruchnius of Torah. We want to connect the physical and the spiritual. Okay, so that is really the story of Shavuos, and that is really why women who may be that white cloth behind the black letter have a very key and integral part in all of that. I'll just finish tying it into Yerushalayim, right? That it is a Chazal which says, Asara kabin shel yofi yordu la'olam. 10 measures of beauty came into the world. Tisha natla Yerushalayim. 9 were taken by Yerushalayim. 1 was taken by the rest of the world. So people look at that and they think, it must be Chazal didn't travel much. I mean, it's okay. It's not, if you're comparing Yerushalayim to, I don't know what, Beersheba or something, okay, but, didn't they go to Switzerland? They didn't go to here, they didn't go to there. That's not the type of beauty we're talking about. The type of beauty that we're talking about is the physical imbued with the spiritual. That's the Tisha Kabim of Yofi that Yerushalayim has. And Yerushalayim not only had it itself, it's not only a physical place which is imbued with that spirituality that makes it so beautiful, it gives that also to other physical things. It brings joy to all, Mesos Kol Haaretz, and it says, this is the Bach's explanation, what we say in Alamichya, when we say Lecho Mipiria Vizbo Mituva, right? He says, Uvenei Yerushalayim Yirakodesh Me'erav Yomenu. Rebuild Yerushalayim, and then we will eat the fruits of the land and be satisfied with its goodness. Because only when Yerushalayim is rebuilt will the bracha and the ruchnius totally fill the fruits of the land and unite us with it. So that's the common theme between Chana and her son Shmuel, between the letters of the Sefer Torah, between Yerushalayim, and what other things we spoke about that I may have forgotten. But meanwhile, wishing everyone a wonderful week, a wonderful Shabbos.